And I just wanted to share, we'll have commentary from, or questions from these two participants, and then we're going to go back to our panel discussion.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ann Ernie. I'm the former Chief Diversity Officer of Lehman Brothers and working with Melinda Wolf right now on leadership and diversity at Bloomberg. It's been a wonderful 5 months. My question follows regarding women's leadership and critical mass. And as I've heard Melinda say several times, we've just lived through the golden age of diversity. And obviously we hope that we'll be able to reinvent and drive this forward. And during the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen a real increase in the number of women in senior, meaningful positions in our companies. So my question is really about how that critical mass played out during this last crisis and what lessons we learned. Often at Lehman, we talked about that leadership and men are tribal. And I saw during the demise of Lehman, I saw during the acquisition of Lehman by Barclays, this tribal behavior play out, whereby the men in power really came together and protected one another. And they assured that they had the right roles and were in the rooms and getting information. And I saw a real centrifuge or spinning out of women on the margins. So my question is, how did you see women in their leadership roles as leaders protect other women during this crisis, and how can we really drive that notion going forward? Because we need to be tribal as well, working together, but also reaching out and protecting each other, you know, as the economy bounces along and bubbles back up.
Thank you, Ann. Now, one of the industries that's known to be particularly tribal is, of course, the investment banking culture. So, Ainesh, Goldman Sachs, tribes?
Yeah, I would say
And how have the women fared within that tribal culture?
I would say very, very tribal. We actually have been fairly fortunate, and it may have been that we may have been lucky in the sense that our senior leadership moved about 6-9 months ago to actually elevate a number of senior women onto our management committee. So they actually had seats at the table as we were going through the turmoil last fall, and had significant voices as it relates to the restructurings that were taking place. And we're very mindful of the impact that it had, not only at the most senior levels, but throughout the entire pipeline. And we're really making certain that in terms of the decisions that were being made, that we were mindful of the impact to diversity, not only from a gender perspective, but across the board as it relates to underrepresented professionals. And I think it has actually been very good in terms of empowering them as we go and the market comes back, that their voices are stronger and that they are actually looking to play a greater role moving forward, and actually making certain that as we move into the next age of diversity, and as we're saying at the firm, we're actually doubling down in diversity and really trying to accelerate what we're actually doing to make certain that the conversation in terms of who are sitting in the seats at the top of their house, that we actually have more women on that front, especially front of the line businesses.
So let me ask, let's be candid. How many of you sitting here across the table have more than 50% female in your executive committee?
The diversity executive committee?
No,
or
the executive CEO
Oh.
and direct reports. 50%, 40%, 30%.
Well, we're at 30% in our executive, meaning the top
Okay.
500 spots. We're over 30%.
Now, let's take the CEO and their
CEO
8 or
direct
10
reports.
direct reports.
Right, okay.
Okay, we're at 40%, 30%, 25%,
Yep. Bank of America is at 25.
22%,
22. She's
20%. Okay, I just wanted to be, to provide a candidly, and with the fullest respect, is that we have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
And I think that when we talk about women being at the table, there aren't a lot of us at the table.
I think the question, though, also from the context perspective, if I think about where we were in 2001, it's sort of when we were sort of peaking, and if I think about our own internal representation, I mean, from a women's perspective, we were below 10% of women partners. And so to get to a point where you're at 15, 20% in the last 5 to 10 years is actually significant movement. But yes, we have a lot further
Yes.
to go in terms
And
of
I think
actually-
also, one of the things to study in organizations is where does the power go? So I'll share the city story. You know, we have a number of management committees. So we had this management committee, and that was about 30 people, but then that grew to 120 people. So there was the creation of the operating committee.
Yeah.
Then the operating committee had about 30 or 40 people, and then they created the executive committee. So every time you looked at it, it's that pyramid. So I just caution you to say that when we look at change and increase in representation, you always have to also consider where is the power. And to the extent that tribes exist, to navigate those tribes and to consider how we retain a voice at the table. All right, I'm going to move to this colleague here. Thank you, Anne. Do you had a question or comment?
Yes, good morning. You just set the stage for the question. Am I too close? I'm sorry, I will. You set the stage for the question that am going to ask. You're a terrific moderator. It's a great panel. My name is Lorene Arbus, and I am a television writer-producer with my own company based in LA and New York. I was in the corporate world for half of my career as the first woman to head up programming for any network, and I've done it twice, Showtime and Lifetime. Now, parent company being Viacom. Now, my question is this. We constantly are hearing about, and I don't really mean to single out AIG, but it just struck me because it was quite early on, the announcement about the Japanese operation. And very specifically, I read in the Wall Street Journal at the time that there would not be any changes because of the great fear of losing talent. And the question I have is, with the unemployment growing and at a very high, and some say the head of U.S. Steel and others say much higher than it's being reported actually, what is this all about? Maintaining these outrageous contracts and the golden parachutes that are built in when, and primarily, clearly, they're held by men. And it probably relates greatly to the tribal system. But what is it that anybody is doing, can do, and what is it that we can do to make a paradigm shift with this mentality that we're going to lose talent when the talent hasn't been, in many cases, that talented, and there's a great deal of talent to be had, and the women less paid could fill those jobs very much more economically, feasibly.
Right.